Hello, and a warm welcome to every one of you, from every corner of the globe. Wherever you are right now, whether you're watching from a bustling city, a quiet town, or a place I've never even heard of, I want you to take a moment. Look at this cityscape. It represents a dream, doesn't it? A promise of limitless potential, of a life polished to a brilliant, flawless shine. But I'm not here to talk about the dream. I'm here to talk about what happens in the shadows it casts. I'm here to tell you a story about the most dangerous commodity in a world of extreme wealth, a secret. And not just any secret, but one so volatile it could make a woman vanish from the face of the earth. Or could it? This is a narrative that begins with a whisper in a golden ballroom and ends with a scream swallowed by the desert sands. It's a labyrinth of obsession, power, and a deception so profound it challenges everything we think we know about truth and justice. So, get comfortable. But I warn you, you may find yourself leaning closer to the screen. This is the story of Layla Al-Mansour, a woman who thought she could outplay the master of the game, and the shocking chain of events that proved just how high the stakes really were. To understand the end of this story, we must first understand its beginning. And that begins not with a crime, but with a performance. In the rarefied, air-conditioned stratosphere of Dubai's elite, image is not just everything, it is the only thing. And Layla Al-Mansour was its reigning star. She had not been born into this world of private jets and palatial compounds, she had engineered her way into it through a marriage to Tariq, a man of old, quiet oil money. For Tariq, wealth was a tool for comfort and stability, a means to a dignified, discreet life. A luxury car was for transportation, a diamond necklace was for a gala, to be locked away again afterward. But Layla understood that in this world, perception was a currency more valuable than the oil beneath the sands. Her life was a meticulously curated exhibition. Her Instagram feed was not a collection of memories. It was a strategic campaign, a battlefield where every post was a calculated move. She was a connoisseur of subtle provocations. A photo of her staring into the endless, rolling dunes captioned, "The desert knows all my secrets." A slow-motion video of her trailing a manicured hand in the turquoise water of a private pool, the text reading, "Some currents can pull you under." Her followers devoured it, interpreting it as the poetic musings of a privileged life. They didn't realize they were reading the clues of a woman who was deeply, profoundly restless, a soul trapped in a gilded cage of her own making, rattling the bars and looking for a weakness. She moved through the social circuit with the precision of a grandmaster. She was not merely attending charity galas and yacht parties, she was conducting reconnaissance. Her eyes, a piercing shade of intelligent brown, missed nothing. She noted alliances, identified sycophants, and mapped the invisible lines of power that connected the city's most influential players. She was hunting for a key, a single point of entry into the innermost sanctum, the place where the real decisions were made, far from the flashbulbs and the champagne fountains. And in her relentless pursuit, her gaze finally settled on the one man who stood at the very center of that web, a man so powerful he was more of a force of nature than a person, Sheikh Zayed al-Rashid. If Layla was the brilliant, restless star, then Sheikh Zayed was the black hole around which entire galaxies of power and influence silently orbited. He was not a man who sought the spotlight, he found it vulgar and unnecessary. While other royals and businessmen jostled for media attention, Zayed operated in the soundproofed, windowless rooms of absolute authority. His power was not loud, it was a constant, atmospheric pressure. A single phone call could reroute international shipping lanes. A quiet word could make a regulatory hurdle disappear overnight. A problem, whether a disgruntled business partner or a potentially embarrassing lawsuit, had a habit of resolving itself permanently and without a trace. He was surrounded by a security detail that was less about personal protection and more a private intelligence agency, men with cold eyes and quieter footsteps who could make a room feel cold simply by entering it. People did not love him or hate him, such emotions were luxuries they could not afford. They feared him. And they obeyed. The courtship between Layla and Zayed was a dance of predators. When Layla first appeared on his radar, she did the one thing no one else had ever dared: she turned her back. In a world of people who scrambled to please him, her cool indifference was a potent, intoxicating challenge. She would grant him a dazzling smile from across a crowded room, only to spend the rest of the evening engrossed in conversation with someone else. She would engage him in witty, intellectually daring banter, her words laced with a subtle mockery that he found strangely exhilarating, and then she would excuse herself, leaving him wanting more. She made the hunter feel like the prey, and Zayed, a man for whom possession was a primary instinct, was utterly and completely captivated. What began was not a romance in any conventional sense. It was a high-stakes merger of two formidable ambitions. For Layla, the affair was a skeleton key. Suddenly, doors that had been permanently locked swung open. She gained access to private airstrips, off-the-books meetings in Geneva and London, and the innermost chambers of Zayed's empire. She was no longer an observer, she was an insider. For Zayed, Layla was a brilliant, beautiful distraction, a fascinating puzzle that he, in a moment of fatal arrogance, believed he was solving. He began to let his guard down. He shared secrets over glasses of vintage wine, showed her the hidden levers that controlled his vast commercial and political machinery. He was showing the magician's tricks to the one person in the audience who was not there to be amazed, but to learn. And learn she did. She wasn't just listening to his words, she was studying his patterns, memorizing his vulnerabilities, and cataloging his sins. The point of no return was not marked by a dramatic argument or a tearful confession. It was found in a moment of serene, silent discovery during a weekend at one of Zayed's most secluded desert estates, a stark, modernist fortress of glass and steel that seemed to float on an ocean of sand. While Zayed was occupied with a late-night international call, Layla's restless curiosity took hold. Wandering the silent halls, her fingers, almost of their own volition, brushed against a heavy, antique tapestry depicting a scene from a Bedouin legend. She felt a slight give. Pushing it aside, she found not a wall, but a cleverly concealed panel, and behind it, a sleek, modern safe. The combination was a guess, a date she had seen scribbled on a notepad in his study, the anniversary of his first major corporate acquisition. The soft, metallic click of the lock disengaging was the sound of her life fracturing into a before and an after. Inside, there were no stacks of cash or glittering jewels. There was only a single, stark, black leather ledger. It was unmarked, its cover worn smooth from use. When she opened it, her breath caught in her throat. This was not a simple financial record, it was the dark, beating heart of Zayed's empire. Its pages were filled with a constellation of coded entries, strings of numbers corresponding to offshore bank accounts in the Cayman Islands and Switzerland, lists of names, some of them globally recognized politicians and businessmen, others belonging to individuals who had simply ceased to exist, and cryptic notations that hinted at payments for services rendered that could never see the light of day. This was the Rosetta Stone of corruption, a map to a hidden world of immense power and profound moral decay. In that silent, airless room, Layla did not feel fear. A cold, crystalline calm settled over her. This was her ticket to freedom. With hands that were remarkably steady, she used a tiny, encrypted camera, a gift from a tech mogul she had charmed months earlier, to photograph every single damning page. The quiet click, click, click of the shutter was the sound of a trap being set, a trap for the most powerful man in the city. The message she sent him 24 hours later was a masterpiece of clinical extortion. It was devoid of emotion, a simple, bulleted list of demands written with the detached precision of a corporate raider. $10 million, wired to a specified Swiss account. A private jet, fueled and waiting, with a flight planned for Monaco. A clean, permanent disappearance, with no attempts to follow or contact her. The implication was clear, a sword of Damocles hanging over his head by a single, digital thread. Refusal would result in this digital ledger being delivered to a short list of investigative journalists in London and New York who had been trying to pierce the veil of his empire for years. She had thrown down the gauntlet. She expected a furious response, a counteroffer, a negotiation. What she received instead was a silence so profound, so absolute, it was more terrifying than any outburst. This was the silence of the deep ocean, where immense pressure can crush steel. It was a silence that spoke of a power so confident, it did not need to yell. It manifested not in words, but in chilling, tangible signs. A black SUV with impenetrable tinted windows appeared on her street, its engine always running, a silent, ominous sentinel that never left. Her phone, a constant companion, began to glitch. Calls would drop for no reason. Strange static would whisper on the line. Her personal email inbox was suddenly flooded with thousands of spam messages, a classic denial-of-service attack designed to bury any crucial communication. The most psychologically devastating blow came when she returned home from a brief outing to find that someone had been inside her villa. Nothing was stolen. No valuables were missing. But the subtle, intimate violation was unmistakable. A novel on her bedside table was bookmarked on a page she hadn't read. The bottles on her perfume tray had been rearranged in a different order. It was a message, clear and terrifying. Your walls are paper to us. We are inside your life. We can touch you whenever we wish. The gilded cage was now a prison, and the walls were not just closing in. They were breathing down her neck. Panic, cold and sharp, began to set in. The brilliant strategist was now a cornered animal. She devised an emergency escape plan. Using an expertly forged passport acquired through a shadowy contact, she packed a single bag with cash, jewels, and the encrypted camera, and headed to Dubai International Airport. Each step felt like walking through quicksand. The bright, cheerful lights of the terminal felt mocking. As she approached the check-in counter, her heart was a frantic drum against her ribs. She handed her fake passport to the attendant, forcing a smile. The agent scanned it. Her expression neutral. Then a slight frown. A second scan. A quiet phone call. Moments later, two men in impeccably tailored suits who were decidedly not airport security appeared at her side. They were polite, their voices low and calm. Ms. Al-Mansour, would you please come with us? There's a small issue with your documentation. Her protests were met with immovable politeness. She was escorted away from the gate, away from her dream of freedom, and into a sterile, windowless office. From that moment, Layla Al-Mansour, the socialite, the influencer, the wife, ceased to exist in the world of light. The public story was a mystery wrapped in a rumor. Her car was found abandoned on a remote desert highway, the keys still in the ignition, her designer purse left on the passenger seat as if she had simply stepped out for a moment and vanished into the thin, hot air. The official police investigation was a masterclass in obfuscation. Press releases were vague, leads went nowhere, the fervent media attention was slowly, deliberately starved of oxygen. The city, adept at moving on, began to forget her face. But beneath the surface, a quiet storm was brewing. Tariq, her husband, initially humiliated, began to feel a gnawing suspicion that curdled into a determined rage. He hired private investigators from Europe, men with reputations for digging where others wouldn't, and began to quietly leak details to international media outlets that were beyond Zayed's immediate reach. The case would have remained a cold, forgotten file, another ghost story for the Dubai elite to whisper about over cocktails, were it not for a man named Rafik, sweating through a cheap shirt in a grimy Istanbul interrogation room. He was one of Zayed's former bodyguards, a man who had been on the periphery of the inner circle until he was caught in a messy, unrelated drug bust. Facing a decades-long prison sentence in a Turkish jail, he decided to trade his silence for his freedom. His testimony, given in a hushed, fearful tone, was like a key turning in a long-locked door. He spoke of a man known only as Khaled, a fixer, a ghost who specialized in making problems disappear, permanently. He claimed that on the night of Layla's disappearance, she had been sedated, driven to a private airstrip, and flown to a predetermined coordinates in the empty quarter, the vast, trackless desert of the Arabian Peninsula. There, he said, she had been buried in an unmarked grave. He provided the GPS numbers to the investigators. A set of digits that felt like a confession etched in gilt. A small, discreet team of investigators, operating far from the spotlight and with a sense of grim determination, traveled to the location. The site was a desolate, God-forsaken place, a baking pan of hard-baked earth under a relentless sun. After hours of digging in the brutal heat, their shovels struck something that was not rock. It was a body, wrapped in expensive, now filthy silk sheets. On its wrist was a Cartier bracelet, an exact match for one Layla had been photographed wearing numerous times. And then, the most bizarre discovery of all, tucked carefully beneath the collarbone, as if placed there with deliberate intent, was a single SIM card from a burner phone. It was all so theatrical, so perfectly staged. The evidence was damning enough to trigger a seismic shift. Zayed's empire, built on a foundation of fear and silence, began to crack. There were no public arrests, no sensational perp walks. Instead, there was a quiet, ruthless dismantling. His assets were frozen. His name was scrubbed from official projects. His allies melted away like mirages in the heat. The narrative was set. Layla was a victim, Zayed was a monster, and justice, of a sort, had been served. But the most incredible, the most mind-bending chapter of this entire saga was yet to be written. It began 6 months later, in a small, unassuming clinic in the ancient port city of Tangier, Morocco. A woman with faint, silvery burn scars tracing the side of her neck and a palpable aura of nervous energy was being treated for a minor respiratory infection. As part of a routine, regional health security protocol, a DNA sample was taken and entered into an international database. Hours later, the system triggered a red alert match. The woman in the clinic was Layla Al-Mansour. She was alive. The revelation was a thunderclap that shattered the carefully constructed reality of the past year. The grave in the desert? A masterful, macabre hoax. The body? An unidentified woman, dressed and accessorized to play a part in a gruesome play. The SIM card? A deliberate breadcrumb, a piece of digital misdirection designed to lead investigators to a dead end while simultaneously framing Zayed for a murder that never happened. Layla had not been a victim. She had been the mastermind. She had used Zayed's own enemies, rival factions within the complex web of regional power who wanted him destroyed, to help her execute this breathtaking deception. The initial blackmail attempt on Zayed was real, a desperate gamble for money and freedom. But her true escape plan, her masterpiece, was always this: to vanish so completely, so definitively, that she could shed her old identity like a snake shedding its skin. She wanted to be free from Tariq's stifling traditionalism, free from Zayed's predatory obsession, free from the gilded prison of a life that felt like a constant performance. And now, she was back. Not with apologies or explanations, but with a literary agent, a 7-figure book deal, and talks of a limited Netflix series. She had manipulated the media, the police, 2 powerful men, and the court of public opinion with the skill of a virtuoso. In the end, Layla Al-Mansour did not just win her freedom. She authored her own legend. Her story is a chilling, modern-day parable for our times. It forces us to question everything we see. In a world saturated with curated images and manufactured narratives, what is real? Who do we trust? Layla proved that the ultimate power in the 21st century is no longer just wealth or political influence, it is the power to control the story itself. And that brings us to the end of our tale, but it also brings us to you. This story is a labyrinth, and I've just guided you through its twists and turns. But now, I want to hear from you. The comments section is now our digital campfire, and I want us to gather around it and talk. Who do you think was the true villain in this saga? Was it Zayed, with his corrupt and predatory power? Was it Layla, with her ruthless manipulation? Or was it the system itself, a gilded world that breeds such extreme games of survival? Let me know your theories down below. I read every single comment, and I am genuinely fascinated by your perspectives. And while you're there, tell me, where are you watching from? The diversity of this community is my favorite part of doing this. Seeing all the different cities and countries light up in the comments makes these stories feel truly global. If you found yourself captivated by this deep dive into the shadows of power and deception, if you love untangling complex, real-world mysteries, then you've found your home here. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tap that notification bell so you won't miss our next journey into the stories that shape our world. The truth is out there, often stranger than fiction, and together, we'll work to uncover it. Thank you for watching.